The silence of Vora 6 was more than just the absence of sound. It was the quiet before the storm. For years, the human colony orbiting the blue giant star had thrived. The colony was a beacon of scientific discovery, with over 5,000 people, scientists, engineers, families, working together to explore the mysteries of space. Life on Vora 6 was peaceful, and the people there were focused on studying deep space particles, hoping to unlock secrets that could change humanity's understanding of the universe. But that all changed in an instant. It began with a strange signal. At first, it seemed like a simple glitch, just static. But as hours passed, the interference grew stronger, as though something was trying to break through. The communications officers on Earth, receiving the faint signal from Vora 6, tried to decode it, but they couldn't make sense of it. It was like nothing they had encountered before. No words, no pattern. Just a noise that seemed almost alive. But then, something even stranger happened. One final message came through, and it wasn't just static anymore. It was a voice. Panicked, breathless, the voice came through the speakers. "It's not a virus. It's thinking." That was the last communication from Vora 6. The message was brief, but it was enough to send shivers down the spine of every human who heard it. There was something on Vora 6, something that wasn't just affecting the people physically. Whatever it was targeting their minds. But before anyone could fully process what was happening, all contact with the colony was lost. The screens went dark. There was no sign of life. No more transmissions. The humans on Earth were left in an eerie, nerve-wracking silence. The United Earth Federation, Earth's governing body, initially thought it was a technical problem. Malfunctions in space were nothing new after all. But as the hours passed, they began to worry. A recovery team was sent, and the ship Odyssey was dispatched to Vora 6 to investigate. When it arrived, what they found was beyond anything they could have imagined. The colony was empty. All of it. Empty streets, darkened homes, and no signs of life. At first, it looked like a ghost town, but as the recovery team searched deeper, they realized it wasn't just abandoned. It was as though everyone had simply disappeared. There were no bodies, no blood, no struggle. It was as if the people had been erased, their very existence wiped from the face of the planet. Only the faintest traces remained. A cup, still warm from a meal left in a hurry. A toy spinning on the floor, abandoned mid-play. The silence was overwhelming. The crew of Odyssey found no explanation. It was like the entire colony had just vanished. That's when something terrifying happened. Odyssey's sensors picked up a signal. Another one. But this time, it wasn't from Vora 6. The source was deep in space, far beyond Vora 6. The signal was heading straight for Earth, and it was moving fast. The recovery team quickly relayed the information back to Earth. The signal was clear now. Something was coming, and it was on a direct path toward humanity. Earth's leaders tried to remain calm, but deep down, everyone knew that this wasn't just a coincidence. Vora 6 had fallen, and now, Earth was next. The countdown had begun. The Odyssey estimated that the unknown force would reach Earth in just 24 hours. No one knew what this force was or what it wanted. But one thing was certain. If it had wiped out Vora 6 so quickly, Earth wouldn't stand a chance unless they figured out what was happening, and fast. The silence of Vora 6 wasn't just a loss of communication, it was a warning, and that warning was now aimed directly at Earth. The situation on Earth escalated quickly, as the mysterious force that destroyed Vora 6 began to draw closer. News of the destruction spread across the planet, sending waves of panic through governments, military forces, and civilians. The United Earth Federation, which had overseen the peaceful expansion of humanity across space, was thrown into a frenzy. Military commanders, scientists, and strategists gathered in secret meetings, trying to understand what had happened to Vora 6 and what Earth could do to stop it. But even the brightest minds on Earth were stumped. The records from Odyssey were not enough to provide a clear explanation. There were no signs of physical damage, no signs of battle. It was as if the people of Vora 6 had been erased, not by weapons, but by something far more sinister. The final transmission from Vora 6 had contained a single, terrifying phrase. "It's not a virus. It's thinking." This statement sent chills down the spine of every scientist and military officer who heard it. They quickly realized that whatever had destroyed Vora 6 wasn't a disease or a weapon. It was something alive, something that could manipulate the minds of entire populations. Whatever it was not just a mindless force. It had purpose, intelligence, and strategy. And it wasn't stopping at Vora 6, it was coming for Earth. The truth started to emerge as Earth's best scientists began analyzing the signals the Odyssey had picked up. The signals were not random. They were intentional. They were part of a larger pattern that suggested this force was not only attacking, but also learning and adapting. As the investigation continued, a terrifying realization began to form. The force had targeted Vora 6 not because it was weak, but because humanity there had something that made it different. The people on Vora 6 were creative thinkers, problem solvers, innovators. In short, they were human, and that, it seemed, was the problem. This force, which had been identified as the Mind Eater, was a predator, a species older than anything Earth had encountered. It had been wandering the galaxy for eons, feeding on the minds of lesser species, draining them of their individuality, their creativity, and their ability to think for themselves. The Mind Eater consumed not flesh, but thought, and with every mind it absorbed, it grew stronger. And Vora 6, with its colony of highly creative humans, had been an irresistible target. The Mind Eater had come for them not to destroy their bodies, but to consume their very essence, their ability to think and reason. As the days ticked by and the Mind Eater's arrival loomed closer, Earth's leaders scrambled to prepare. They couldn't fight something that fed on thoughts with weapons or technology. They knew that conventional methods would not work against an enemy that didn't care about physical destruction. The Mind Eater didn't want power. It wanted to erase the very things that made humanity unique: creativity, individuality, and the will to think beyond what was given. In secret labs and high-security military bases, Earth's top minds began to work together to find a way to defend against the Mind Eater. It wasn't clear how to defeat it, but they knew one thing: they couldn't let it erase humanity's thoughts and creativity. The enemy might be coming, but humanity wasn't going down without a fight. The countdown was ticking, but there was a glimmer of hope. If humans could tap into their most unique strengths, those very things the Mind Eater feared, they might stand a chance. And so, Earth prepared, bracing for the worst, but hoping that their ingenuity and resilience would be enough to face whatever was coming. The Mind Eater was close, and Earth had only 10 hours left to figure out how to fight back. Time was running out, but humanity was determined to protect the one thing that made them special: their minds. And they were about to discover that sometimes the greatest weapon isn't one of force, but one of thought. The hours slipped away as fear gripped the world tighter with every passing minute. 10 hours left. That was all Earth had before the Mind Eater reached orbit. While the skies above remained quiet, the minds of Earth's people were anything but. Inside the massive underground facility known as Atlas Core, hidden deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, a final plan was being put together. The brightest minds had come together from all over the world: scientists, philosophers, military tacticians, and even artists. This wasn't just a war of strength anymore. This was a war of thought, a war of identity. Every screen inside the control room glowed with data, signals, language patterns, and brainwave studies. They weren't building bombs. They were trying to build something different, something human minds could use to resist the attack. The Mind Eater didn't use weapons. It used ideas, whispers, illusions. It infected the mind, filled it with doubt, pulled away reason, and replaced it with silence. But humanity had something else. They had imagination. And that, they believed, might be their only weapon. The leading neuroscientist, Dr. Lena Rourke, stood before the team with trembling hands and a voice filled with urgency. She had discovered something in the recordings from Vora 6, patterns hidden within the static, almost like a song. Not music, not in any usual sense, but a rhythm, a flow. It reminded her of poetry. That's when the team realized something incredible. The Mind Eater didn't just consume thoughts. It hated unpredictability. It feared chaos. It feared the wildness of human imagination, the things that didn't follow logic, the things that couldn't be broken into rules. It feared creativity. It feared dreams. And that gave Earth a strange kind of hope. If they could create a mental shield made of pure, chaotic thought, of unpredictable, creative, emotional expression, they might confuse the Mind Eater, maybe even push it back. Work began at once. Writers created strange stories with no ending. Artists painted wild colors that made no sense. Musicians composed music with no rhythm. Children were asked to draw whatever came to their minds without being told what it should be. The more bizarre, the better. This wasn't madness. This was a new kind of defense. They called it the dream net, a global signal made from the unfiltered chaos of human imagination. A wave of thought so random, so beautiful, so human, that the Mind Eater wouldn't be able to consume it. It would choke on it. At the same time, a group of trained soldiers volunteered for a dangerous mission. They would go aboard a ship called the Spark and meet the Mind Eater in orbit. The plan wasn't to fight it with weapons, but to face it with their minds open, linked to the dream net. These brave men and women would act as the front line, carrying the chaos of Earth's mind into the heart of the creature. Some feared they would be lost. Others believed they might become legends. With only 2 hours left, the Spark launched. Its crew sat silently, their eyes closed, minds open to the dream net flowing through their neural links. They weren't thinking of war. They were thinking of everything else. Of laughter, of nonsense, of love, of wild ideas that had no purpose, but to exist. As the ship entered orbit, Earth's skies began to change. A strange ripple moved through the clouds. Lights danced above like sparks in a storm. The Mind Eater had arrived. It was close. The Spark moved forward slowly, toward the center of the ripple, where nothing existed. No stars, no light. Just dark space and thought. Humanity's final gamble had begun. The weapon was not steel, but imagination. And now, all they could do was wait and hope that the very thing that made them human could save them. As the Spark entered the black void of space, the crew was locked in an eerie silence, their minds synchronized with the dream net that flowed through them. The concept was simple. They would use the most chaotic, unpredictable thoughts to shield themselves from the Mind Eater's influence, confusing it with the randomness of human imagination. Yet, the fear among them was undeniable. They were entering the heart of an unknown enemy, one that could wipe out entire colonies with a single thought. Every member of the crew knew that they weren't just fighting for their survival, they were fighting for the future of humanity. The dream net pulsed around them, feeding their minds with a strange blend of freedom and chaos. Thoughts and images swirled in their minds, none making sense, none fitting together. But that was the point. The unpredictability of human creativity was their greatest strength. As the Spark approached the coordinates where the Mind Eater was believed to be, the ship's sensors went haywire. The void in front of them seemed to bend, as if space itself were being reshaped. They couldn't see it yet, but they felt it. A presence, a weight pressing down on their minds. Something that wasn't a weapon. Something that didn't have a physical form, yet its very essence could be felt. The crew was now directly in the Mind Eater's territory, where thoughts were twisted and perceptions were shattered. They were in the belly of the beast. It didn't take long before the first signs of attack appeared. The crew began to experience strange, vivid hallucinations. Some saw their loved ones, smiling and waving, only to vanish into the air. Others saw creatures from their deepest fears, monsters, shadows, and darkness closing in. It was the Mind Eater, at work. It was invading their minds, trying to break their will, trying to erase them. But the dream net, for the moment, held strong. Each time the crew members felt themselves slipping, they would focus on a single thought: creativity, chaos, imagination. They thought of anything that didn't make sense, absurd stories, random colors, strange dreams, and it was enough to push the darkness back just a little. The battle for their minds was intense, but the crew was strong. They had trained for years in the most difficult environments, and their connection to the dream net was solid. As the ship continued its journey, they finally saw it: the Mind Eater. It was not a creature made of flesh and bone, but something far more terrifying. A swirling mass of darkness and energy, constantly shifting, constantly changing. It looked like a storm in space, a tornado made of nothing but emptiness and thought. The Mind Eater was an entity of pure cognition, capable of bending and distorting the reality around it, drawing its strength from the fear and confusion of its victims. As the spark drew closer, the crew felt the true weight of the battle. The Mind Eater was not just attacking them. It was attacking everything that made them human. It was attacking their thoughts, their essence, and with every passing second, it grew stronger. But just as all hope seemed lost, a breakthrough occurred. The crew began to realize something. They weren't alone in the dream net. They could sense the thoughts of Earth's people, all of them, every single person who had contributed to the dream net. The random chaotic thoughts of millions of humans now surged through the crew, giving them strength. The Mind Eater might have been able to erase their thoughts, but it could never replicate the vast, endless variety of human imagination. And that was the key. The Mind Eater couldn't consume humanity's creativity. It could only distort it, twist it. But as long as the crew held onto the raw power of their imagination, they would keep it at bay. With this newfound understanding, the crew of the Spark fought back with everything they had. They fed the dream net more, pushing their wildest, most unpredictable thoughts into the chaos. They fought the darkness, not with fear, but with the brilliance of their own minds. It wasn't about control, it was about freedom. The Mind Eater might have had the power to erase, but humanity had the power to create. And in the battle for Earth's future, that was the one weapon the Mind Eater could never take. The final battle between humanity and the Mind Eater was a clash of two very different forces. One was a cold, consuming presence, an ancient being that lived to erase thought, to remove individuality, to swallow all creativity. The other was humanity itself, wild, unpredictable, and filled with endless potential. As the Spark fought to stay within the heart of the Mind Eater's influence, the crew became more than just individuals. They became a channel for the dreams, ideas, and chaos of billions of people back on Earth. They were not alone. With every passing minute, the dream net grew stronger, an endless surge of human thought that began to push back against the oppressive, consuming force of the Mind Eater. Inside the Mind Eater's domain, the crew realized that the only way to stop it wasn't by confronting it with force, but by embracing their humanity in the purest form. The Mind Eater could devour entire civilizations, but it couldn't understand the wild, messy beauty of human thought. It couldn't comprehend the contradictions, the spontaneity, the dreams that made each person unique. As the crew fed more chaotic, unpredictable ideas into the dream net, the Mind Eater's power began to waver. It tried to adapt, to twist the thoughts of the crew into something it could consume, but the more it did so, the more it seemed to fracture. Every moment of creativity, every strange, nonsensical idea that was injected into the dream net, caused a ripple through the Mind Eater's form, pulling it apart from the inside. Back on Earth, the world watched, holding its breath. The dream net pulsed with energy, a network of pure human thought, creativity, and chaos that connected every person on the planet. People had no idea how important their contributions were, but each random idea, each outburst of creativity, added another layer to the net that was holding back the Mind Eater. The collective strength of humanity's imagination had become their greatest weapon. The force that had wiped out entire civilizations was now struggling, fighting to hold on to the last remnants of its power, unable to cope with the strange, unpredictable nature of human thought. The crew on the Spark could feel the change. The Mind Eater was weakening. Its form was less stable, its grip on their minds starting to loosen. It was trying to fight back, to consume more of the crew's thoughts, but it couldn't keep up with the constant barrage of creative energy. Finally, the crew of the Spark realized that they had reached the tipping point. The Mind Eater was no longer an unstoppable force. It was a creature in retreat, fighting against something it couldn't understand or control. It was a creature that thrived on the fear of being erased, on the silence of empty minds. But humanity's creativity, its refusal to be contained, was too much for it. In one final, powerful moment, the crew fed the dream net the wildest, most chaotic thought they could imagine. A thought that was both absurd and profound. one that no logical mind could comprehend. And with that final surge of creativity, the Mind Eater shattered. Its presence fractured and dissolved, unable to withstand the unpredictable nature of human imagination. The crew of the Spark watched as the swirling mass of darkness collapsed into nothingness, a fading echo in the vastness of space. The battle was over. Humanity had won, not through force, but through the very thing that made them unique: their ability to think, to dream, to imagine. The Mind Eater, an ancient force that had consumed worlds for eons, had been defeated by the one thing it couldn't touch: human creativity. Back on Earth, people celebrated, unaware of the full scope of the battle that had just taken place. They had unknowingly participated in the defense of their own world, contributing to the very survival of humanity itself. The Mind Eater was gone, but the lesson remained. Humanity's greatest strength was not in its weapons, but in its minds, and no force in the universe could ever take that away.